I am lucky enough to be the mayor of this great town, and tonight our town forum is a little different. We've been doing these town forums for more than 20 years now. It's our open New England style kind of meeting where you can come out and talk about whatever you want. There's really no form or process that we go through here. The formats typically will just talk a little bit at the beginning, and then we'll open the floor up to whatever it is that you want to talk about. So with me tonight is you see our borough administrator, Duffey, is here. Commissioner Leonard was unable to join us, and Commissioner Lewandowski was going to be here, but he just literally called me just before I got on that they have a little bit of an issue going on, and he could not jump on, little thing going on at the house. So he's hoping to join a little bit later, but he can't get on right now. Oh, here comes Joan now.
Hi, sorry guys, I had some trouble.
You got it. So we're just getting started, Joan. So the format is that we'll just simply, make a few comments. I started to tell you, Duffey, our administrator, is here. We're happy to have with us tonight a special little combined session where Regan Kaiden, the school board president, is here, as well as the new school superintendent, Fred McDowell, is on as well. We welcome him, and this is all the more reason with everything, us being in the middle of a pandemic, and it'd be big enough just to come in and be new superintendent, all the issues there would be, but throw into it the issues about getting back to school full time, remote learning, all that happy mix of issues, and we have a little bit more fun for him. So, Joan, I don't know if you don't have your video on purpose, or if Rebecca, have you made Joan a co-host so she can turn her video on?
I can't turn it on. It won't go on.
Yes, so Rebecca, you need to make her a co-host so that she can turn it on. Okay, there you go. So you should be able to do it now, Joan.
Here I am.
Bada bing. Okay, so Joan, you want to lead us off? Just whatever opening kind of comments you want to have.
Can you give me a hint as to what you think needs to be said?
Well, everybody's out here. We've got a whole group of people on board. My guess, 98 participants. My guess is not a lot of them are here for the latest update on plowing snow on the borough roads.
Right.
But Joan, you want to give anything you want to say to start the evening off?
I'll just say welcome everybody to the special town forum. Glad to see there's so many participants tonight, and that's it.
You got it. So okay. I'll give you, before I turn it over to Regan and to Fred, I'll give you just a real quick update about really pandemic issues.
Okay.
We're working hard with the county in terms of being ready to assist in distribution of vaccines as soon as that becomes possible. Meaning that I was on the phone with the Commissioner Capelli today, and which we talk all the time, but the county's been getting 3,000 vaccines a week. Next week, they expect to move up to 4,000 vaccines. By the middle, second or third week of March, they're hoping that the Johnson & Johnson vaccines will begin to come in, and they'll have 2 or 3 times those vaccines.
That's awesome.
So when that happens, they may be able to do some of the things that we think need to be done, which are on-site vaccinations at senior facilities. I know teacher vaccinations an issue, move them up in line. The trouble right now is there's so few vaccines coming in that there's not the room to just move anybody to the front of the line to fill in spots because they don't have vaccines to give out. So in prep for that, the borough has registered, has assisted a little over 100 seniors, signed them up for the online registration. We have them all poised, ready to go. Of that 100 plus, we've got at least 60 that need transportation. So we're setting things up to prepare for that, to be able to do that. Trouble is, we can't get them appointments anywhere either. So what the county will do is set us up with blocks of time, so that we'll be able to run like take about 20 colleagues with seniors in to a set block of time, get them vaccinated, bring another group in another time. So we're working on getting that done. All the other things with respect to the pandemic are in full gear. Colleagues with Cares is hard at it. Still helping families, still trying to fill in some of the gaps. And we're working with our business community to try to keep them going, try to make changes on the avenue and try to really adjust to everything. Colleagues with Prime has been working really well. We're talking with the business folks about just pretty much once a week, and getting more feedback about what else is going to be critical for them. So it's a full court press. If any of you know of any issues of any families that are in any need, please email me direct, let me know so we can get them some help. If you know of any issue or have any ideas or thoughts of things that we can do, don't hesitate to get something out to us, okay? So with that, the reason everybody's here, I'm going to turn it over to our school board president, Regan. You can just hand it off to introduce your new superintendent.
Sure. Yeah, I'm not going to take up much time tonight because I have a feeling that I'm not the person that everyone would like to hear from tonight. So I just wanted to thank Mayor Maley and the commissioners for hosting us tonight. This was really nice of them to share their platform with us. It's great. We've got over 100 people here to hear from Dr. McDowell and about what's going on in the school district. Two-way communication is something that the board and the district really has wanted to increase more anyway. And this is a great start and a great way for, in the middle of a pandemic, more folks in town to get to know our new superintendent, who we are very excited about, and to know what's going on with the schools, especially in light of everything going on with the pandemic and trying to work through next steps. So without further ado, I'm going to pass it over to Dr. McDowell and have him take it from there. Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, Regan. And thank you to the mayor, the commissioners. Thank you to Cass and the whole borough leadership team. Thank you for inviting us. It's an extremely important topic. And also thank you to the Board of Education for the opportunity to impact my local community in which where we live, where our children go to school, where we are also residents and homeowners. There's been lots of topics and discussions as it relates to reopening. And I think that it's ultimately important for us to engage in those discussions, but I also want to make sure that we're providing clarity. As a school system for Collingswood and Oak Lynn, we are open by definition. So when we talk about reopening, I think that what's gotten lost in the mix is some of the national dialogue coming from some of the media outlets and some of the pundits about organizations within our country that have yet to provide any level of in-person instruction. Within our school system, we have cohorts of children that are participating in hybrid learning, either Mondays and Tuesdays for in-person instruction, or Thursdays and Fridays, with Wednesday being remote for all. We also have a cohort of students and families of higher needs and higher risk and mitigating factors that are participating in 4 days of in-person instruction, broken down by targeted data and support as indicated by the schools, each individual school's process, and ultimately each school's capacity to be able to still safely maintain social distancing. So I think that one of the things I would like to make sure that we are conveying is that we as a Board of Education, as a district leadership team, fully believe that the best place for children to be is in school in person. That's what we believe. However, given the fact that we are surviving and operating within challenging circumstances brought on by this pandemic, there are some decisions that still have to be made. Some of those decisions will not be popular. However, we are all committed to making sure that we transition students back to full-time instruction in person as quickly and safely as possible, but that requires us to take into consideration the data. First of all, our families back in July were surveyed, and almost 25% of our families indicated at that time that they wished to remain in full-time remote for the remainder of the year. We have been transitioning students back since September, increasing the number of students receiving in-person instruction. And as late as November, we began transitioning the neediest families, whether they be high needs, special education, English language learners, children and families with significant barriers to learning brought on by home challenges, and so forth. Each school has been personally inviting families to participate in 4 days of in-person instruction. Some families have accepted that invitation, and other families have rejected that in order to stay in full-time remote. We fully understand that these are not normal times. We fully understand that there is a significant burden being placed on students and families and our community by having to operate this way. However, the data has been pretty clear, and although we are making progress, the latest COVID index indicates that we have recently transitioned out of orange status, which is high, to moderate status. The feedback coming from our public health officials at both the state as well as the county level have indicated to us that we can offer as much in-person instruction as we are able to adhere to social distancing guidelines and recommendations from the CDC. What that translates into is that by class and by grade level in many schools, some grades and some classes have reached capacity, but that does not mean that we have reached maximum capacity in order to maintain those social distancing guidelines. So one of the messages that we will be putting out on Friday, above and beyond a district-wide survey, is we feel the need to collect new data. Circumstances have changed since July, and we want to make sure that we are being responsive to the needs of our community. So we will be sending out a survey for the community on Friday, where we are asking some of the same types of questions, in addition to a few others, as it relates to expanding in-person instruction and not going backwards. Our long-term goal is between now and September is to transition to as normal as we possibly can, with the full understanding is that COVID is not going away between now and September. And we want to also be mindful that mitigation strategies and social distancing and disinfectant and cleaning protocols will more than likely exist within our community and within our country, probably through summer of 2022. So we do realize and understand that our families are tired. COVID has fatigued us all. There has been a massive amount of challenge and chaos and burden related to the conditions of the pandemic. But as stewards of the resources that we have and the guiding principles of doing no harm within our community, we want to make sure that we are operating in a safe and a productive manner. In the coming days, we will be releasing updates and progress on our transition and our plans to move towards in-person instruction. When we talk about expanding and transitioning, that is not an overnight process. In order for us to appropriately engage our community, in order to engage our educators who are fully participatory and responsible for implementation, that requires lots of in-depth planning and analysis of the data to make sure that we get it right. I cannot stress enough, and unfortunately, we have 500,000 reasons why it's extremely important that we are mindful, we are thoughtful, we are intentional about the decisions that we make moving forward, and more specifically, that we are inclusive, and so that our stakeholders have a say in how we move forward, when we move forward, and what to expect when we do so. It would be very easy to make unilateral decisions, and those unilateral decisions would have negative repercussions on our school community, and that is not something that we are prepared to do at this time. So as we move forward, there will be opportunities to engage, there will be opportunities to provide feedback and to participate in this change process that we are making, with the understanding that the transition will be slow, it will be tiered, but it's not a matter of if we move into in-person instruction, it's a matter of how fast we move. And I just want to make sure that the community understands that there are a lot of outstanding educators and community leaders, as well as board leaders who are helping us make these very tough decisions. But at the end of it, our hearts are focused on what's in the best interest of our children and our families. I thank everybody who is here. We appreciate you coming out. We appreciate the energy and the level of engagement with this very important topic. And I hope that you will continue to stay engaged. You will continue to hold us accountable, but more specifically that you will be participatory in some of these processes as we think about how do we move in this new direction in order to get to our next normal. I don't want us to normalize what's happening right now, because this is not normal. We are not living in normal times. The loss that every family has experienced is not something that we wish to maintain. So thinking about how do we get to our next normal is really the guiding principle. In our last community update, we outlined what the factors that we would be using in order to make decisions, and we kind of outlined the guiding principles and ultimately within our process. And the guiding principles that we are using are research-based, and they account for 10 core categories. They are not overtly prescriptive. They are just guiding principles that we will use to inform our work. One of which is closing the digital divide. We do realize that inequities existed before COVID, and those inequities have been exacerbated during COVID. So we are fully acknowledge that there are core challenges that we have to overcome in order to support all students within our school communities. We also realize that there are challenges as it relates to distance learning. Reinforcing those through professional development, through updating of our tools and our resources will help us move to that space. Assessing what students need. This is a constant two-way discussion between students, caregivers, and families, and their schools. So there's not a single determinant that determines how we tackle this particular problem. And when it comes to personalized learning, or making sure that every student has what they need in order to be able to move forward, that is the work. And our educators have taken on that task and are continuing to improve their processes in order to make sure that we're meeting the needs of our children. Ensuring the supports for social emotional learning. When we talk about loss, I cannot stress enough that academic loss is extremely important, but the loss of connection is equally important. And what we have been seeing as a result of this pandemic is students' loss of the love of learning, loss of being able to engage with their classmates, even sometimes with their friends, with their teachers, and specifically within their school. They've lost that connection. And we as an organization are going to have to figure out, how do we re-engage children to get children excited about learning again in this new iteration of what it means to go to school in the midst of a pandemic. In addition to focusing on how do we redesign school so that school is reflective.
Hey, Fred, I'm sorry. Can you just hang on one second? Hey, folks, listen, I see people are writing, long questions in chat, okay? We're not going to do the questions in chat, okay? We have an ability here. You'll raise your hand. You can actually speak and talk what your question is. So just don't, we've learned in the past, we can't keep up with 100 people typing 50 questions here, okay? We'll go through with everybody. So just hang on the chat. No need to be typing everything up, okay? Just hang on. Okay, sorry, Fred. We're trying to get us focused on how we'll do questions
Not
here.
a
That's all.
problem. I will wrap it up because I know that there will be questions. Redesigning schools to make sure that we are providing the necessary attention to those relationships among students to students and students to teachers and students to their schools. Also making sure that we're being culturally responsive. We are blessed to be in a very diverse community, and we have to make sure that all children are able to access the full curriculum and meet the standard. And that requires that we think differently about the work. We also have to provide opportunities for expanded learning time. The current structures that are in place are not opportune because students are not receiving the full gamut of the educational experience. So we know that there will be a necessity for us to expand learning time and to provide non-traditional ways in which to enrich the educational experience for our students and our families. We also understand that wraparound supports are going to be needed, especially in the areas of mental health and social emotional learning. In addition, we're going to have to equip our teachers with the tools and the resources for them to reinvent the learning experience as we begin to transition back to full-time in-person instruction. In addition to making sure that we are being good stewards of the resources that are available and leveraging our partnerships to make sure that we have the appropriate funding to meet the needs of our students will be how we prioritize. Engaging our educators, engaging our community, engaging our families, engaging our partners. There's a constant feedback cycle that we have to go through in order to make sure that we get it right, so that individuals understand what we're doing versus what we're not doing, and ultimately to make sure that we are being responsive and not reactive to the needs of our students and our families. That's the guiding principles for how we're going to move forward. That work has already begun, and we will be providing ongoing updates as we make progress. But I will state again that any family within our organization, within our school community, that is currently experiencing an undue burden as it relates with our current structure, I would encourage you to reach out to your building leader and have a conversation in order to determine how we provide the additional support needed while we work on a much longer term plan around expansion.
Okay, Doc, thank you very much. I want to give a little technical direction to Rebecca instead of trying to text this over to her. Rebecca, it sounds like we're at capacity on this webinar. So can you, Cassandra, can you go check the Zoom account and bump up on the webinar? I know from doing the Zoom meeting that there's a way you just add on. It's like a one-time for the month. It's a large group charge. Okay, so if you could go hunt that and see, because I know a couple people couldn't go on, and if there's a couple, there's probably more. So, and we're recording, right, Cassandra? Yeah, we got that recording. I see that. Okay. All right. Commissioner Lewandowski, it was a little late getting there. I let everybody know you had a little fun stuff going on at the house. You're muted up there. Would you like to say anything? You're muted, Bob.
No, I listen. More importantly, that this is folks' time, and I'll be here as long as I need to be. So if there are specific questions for us as well, be happy.
You got it. Okay, so we're going to work off raising the hands. That's how we're going to take questions. So Eleanor Mckenna, I think I'll be able to answer you. And if I can't, then Rebecca, you're going to need, I thought as co-host I could. Danny?
Tell me again what you're trying to do. Sorry, I was looking into the Zoom participant.
It's not letting me recognize people to speak. So you need on the raised hands.
To recognize. I'm going to recognize Joey right here, and now you are allowed to talk. Go right ahead. No?
Joey, it looks like you're muted.
There we go. It might be signed in as my son, so I'm not Joey, I'm Joe.
Oh, yeah.
First question I have is he attends Zane North. So my first question is, I highly doubt the Zane North playground is zoned as a parking lot. Why are we currently using that as a parking lot instead of a playground on days when it's 55 degrees out, when they're only going twice a week?
I'm sorry, so you cut out. Can you say that again?
I said-
I'll ask it for you, Joe. I'll ask it for you. Fred, it's Zane North School. There's cars being parked in there as a parking lot. And so kids can't get in and use the playground, like use the schoolyard. So he's wondering if, especially on nice days, if the cars could be not in the schoolyard.
That's a great question. I will.
Well, I got a little add-on to that too. Is that's not zoned as a parking lot, meaning you don't have bollards, you don't have shatterproof glass, you don't have safe entryways. Cars should not be back there when there are doors and there's windows back there in CMU block. That doesn't meet regulations in New Jersey. This is what I do. So
I got you.
I will
I think
connect.
Fred's looking for a pen.
I will connect with Principal Santo, and I will investigate. I will investigate that particular issue.
all right. My two other questions you've somewhat addressed, but we'll call it full-time learning. Why are we behind the curve compared to Haddonfield, Haddon Township, Blackwood, Elmer, New Jersey? So in our county, outside of our county, it seems like we're behind the curve.
Well, I would actually push back against that, sir. I would say that we are not Haddon Township. We are Collingswood. And in terms of the needs and capacity, every school district has different needs and different capacity. And every school district are going to be in different continuums in terms of their planning. I would say that as a district, we have been in a phase of reopening since September. So we're now at another phase where it's time to move to the next tier. And that's really where we are within our planning. So I would say that as far as reopening, we did reopen in September, and we have been in steadily increasing the number of students participating in in-person instruction since September.
Yeah, that's
Other districts were not as forthcoming in terms of that. And therefore, some of the districts within our region are actually reopening because they were closed and only offered remote instruction.
I did clarify that 4 or 5 days a week. Do you have the capacities for our school that you could send out to all the parents? So we can compare like our first grade capacity to what the capacity is available? Meaning number of students?
No, sir, we do not, because, and here's why. There are, not all classrooms are created equal. So that particular question, that's a very nuanced question, and each school is going to have different levels of capacity based on different classroom sizes that they're utilizing. So for example, one school may have open availability in 3rd and 5th grade, but they may have reached capacity based on family choice in other grades. So what I would encourage you to do is to follow up directly with your child's building administrator, express your interest in increasing of in-person instruction, and then that will start that conversation to determine whether or not there is space available based on the current guidelines as they relate to social distancing.
Okay, my final question is, why are we doing 4 hours a day and only 3 of them are taught? I mean, that's ridiculous.
I'm not sure your question, sir.
Why are we only teaching the kids for 3 hours a day?
Well, the existing structure was, for one, is to provide opportunities for students not to sit in front of a computer screen for 7 hours a day, with a host of diverse experiences for students to be able to participate and engage within their teachers. So the current structures were based on the original guidelines that were established over the summer based on feedback from the community and guidance from the Department of Education. We are also exploring the revision of the school day as well.
Okay, because it seems like to me, if we're going to get a half an hour break in the middle of a 4-hour session, why not give another half an hour break and at least come back for an hour after lunch? I mean, we pay a lot of money in taxes in Collingswood, as you know, Mr. Maley, and we're getting.
Whoa, that's the school you're paying that to. That's not me.
I know, but we are getting 50% of what we pay for right now. If that, we're not getting 50%, but. That was my final question. I'd like to see some movement and some plans in writing. It's we pay a lot of money in taxes. I think we deserve it.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Rebecca, you have control over people with their hands raised.
Yes, I'm gonna, our next hand raise, just. Ed Beitz, you are live. Go ahead and please share your question.
Hi, this is Ed Beitz. Sorry, my wife's volume is echoing. Just give me 1 second. Okay, sorry about that. So, for anyone who's on this call who did not attend last night's board meeting, we've already received, I shouldn't say we've received more information, but we've received more talking points than was even on the agenda. I found this hard to believe and still reeling from it. And those of you who weren't on the call, there was a 14-section agenda for the board meeting last night with subparts, and not one item on it addressed the reopening of schools. Meanwhile, in the wake of that today, we've learned that Haddonfield not only addressed this at their school board meeting a few days ago, but also fully displayed their phase 2 reopening plan, which they've been working on since October. My question ultimately, and maybe this is, since I know Dr. McDowell is relatively new, maybe this question is more appropriately pointed to Ms. Regan, but as a parent, and I don't mean this to sound too caustic, but what have we been doing? How are we citing a survey from July? I understand that there was some effort had to be made to replace Dr. Oswald in finding a suitable replacement, but you got to be able to walk chalk and chew gum when you're running a school board. And the fact that not only does there not appear to be a phase 2 plan, and I know Dr. McDowell just said we're in another phase. I noticed we didn't use exactly what you put a number to it or any other kind of plan. It's in phase 1B. But what have we been doing? What is the and I don't know if you've seen Haddonfield's plan, but there's dates. There's a return for K through 2 on March 1st. Older students go back, and we have Dr. Anthony Fauci, who I'm sure many, and I'm included in one of them, many people on this call deeply respect and found to be very upset by his sidelining in the prior administration, who said 2 weeks ago, younger kids 8th grade and below don't transmit this disease. And they need to get them back into school. How are we now only talking about putting a phase 2 together? And how on earth did the school board come up with an agenda for last night's meeting that did not, I may have heard COVID come up tangentially, but 45 minutes was spent on play spaces, which and a rock garden, which, no disrespect at all to the rock garden, I'm sure, and the people that go to work for it. But the fact that something that is only for one of the 5 schools needed to have that much time spent on it, when there was absolutely no reference to anything COVID. And by the way, newsflash. The play spaces. The play spaces are closed. So that's my question. What have we been doing? Why are we still citing a study from July? That's my question.
Okay, you got it. Thanks. Go ahead.
Dr. McDowell, would you like me to answer? Or would you like to answer? I don't know. I kind of went back and forth, so I don't know what you'd like to do here.
Well, in honesty, I cannot speak intelligently about what led up to prior to February 1st. However, what I will say is that as the conditions have changed, school districts, including Collingswood, have had to pivot and make changes based on a moving target. So when we think about moving forward, it has been a core challenge for us to be able to move forward when there has been mixed information as it relates to the guidance. I will share again that our colleagues within Camden County are meeting the needs of their school district based on their data, based on their circumstances and their capacity. We have different circumstances and different capacity. And I think that for us to prematurely put out plans or to put out false dates would be irresponsible. So we have been as forthcoming as possible since my tenure about where we are, what we're prepared to do, and the move to aggressively shift into in-person instruction is what we're really focused on right now. We can't go back in history in order to figure out what happened months ago under different circumstances, under different operating conditions. What I'm focused on right now, alongside the boards of education, as well as the district leadership team, our association leaders and our educators, is how do we safely, effectively, and swiftly transition to full in-person instruction. So that's really what we're focused on.
And sir, but you just said everything that you said in your preamble. What I'm curious, like, what data? Why isn't it shared? Why hasn't it been shared? And what has? And again, I recognize you've only been here for 3 weeks, so I guess the question is better directed to Ms. Kaiden.
Yeah, how about I'm just going to just for a second there, because I do want to say Dr. McDowell has been on the job for a pretty short amount of time and has been working on this since February 1st, since day one on the job. So let's just make that part clear as well, that he has been talking about what this looks like, and he, in the middle of a pandemic where he can't be in person with all of his administrators and teachers, has been working to not only meet them, but then also learn what needs to happen next when it comes to expanding access to in-person learning for our students. In addition,
I agree. The lack of progress is not an indictment of him. Unfortunately, I believe it's an indictment of the school board, which was exemplified by the lack of it even being on the agenda last night. So again, I will say, what data, what progress?
Mr. Beitz,
Yes.
can I, let's just do this, okay? Let's let you ask the question. Let's let Regan answer it, okay? And not interrupt, okay? Let her answer.
So what I was going to say was that Dr. Oswald, who was in the position before Dr. McDowell, was communicating, at least I was receiving those communications as a parent, not as a board member, at least twice a week, with pretty detailed information about where we were with the coronavirus pandemic, what to expect from the learning models that they were using at the time. Did he then create a plan for when he would no longer be on the job? No, I don't think he did, because I don't think he felt that that would be an appropriate thing to do. I think he felt that that would be something that the next superintendent would need to do. So the difference, a huge difference between Collingswood and any of the other school districts that have been listed, is that we had a superintendent retire pretty suddenly in the middle of this pandemic. And so we needed to hire a new one and really focus on finding someone that we thought could really do this job well. And then in addition, unfortunately, we also have a restart because of that when it comes to creating these plans for the next phase. So I understand everyone's frustration. I have kids in the school district too. It's not ideal, and no one is saying that it is ideal, but we also are not going to rush the process because we're frustrated with it. We're going to make sure we do it right. So thank you for giving us your feedback. We haven't heard that feedback from you before today. I don't know what's been going on in Haddonfield or Haddon Township or someone else that maybe has been coming to board meetings or pushing for in-person instruction more. And that is partially why they chose to go forward with the plan sooner. I don't know. But that is where we stand at the moment. And we're standing by making sure that we do things right.
I guess I would say I take exception to calling this rushing it. It sounds like we're playing catch up. And, you know, again, I understand that his retirement was perhaps circumstances beyond anyone's, the literal actual, his deciding to retire was beyond anyone's control.
Right.
But a lack of putting a transition plan in place and keeping the oars in the water while we were looking for a new captain. I personally think
it's important to also understand how the schools work, in that the school board doesn't really have the control to create a plan for reopening. We can approve that plan, but we don't work in the school district.
Well, that's
so
fair, but I would also ask not to be just.
I'm not going to argue with you about it. I'm just saying
it's not a matter of argument. I would just ask. I'd ask not myself, not if you would not interrupt me. I guess my point is I do take exception to it being called rushing it at this point. I think frankly, it's time to get to work. Thank you.
Okay.
Thank
All
you.
right. Thank you.
Great. We're going to move on to the next hand raise, which I have is Maggie. I'm going to share you right now. Hold on just a second. She disappeared. Hold on. Let me see who else I have. Eleanor Mckenna,
Okay.
please go ahead with your.
Eleanor, you just need to unmute yourself and then you can just ask your question or give a comment.
Thank you. I'm actually Eleanor's mom. I'm using her school computer. But the questions I have actually are, of course, like most of the parents, I'm curious about the county rules that we're trying to follow as far as capacity in the schools. Because I personally would like to get my kids in 4 days a week. When I heard that there were children going 4 days a week, I was confused why my kids weren't going 4 days a week. And I have actually talked to the administrator at the building, and he told me to send him an email, which I did, and I got no response to. But that being said, I'm just wondering, he did tell me that they have to follow county rules, and I think the county rules said, I understand there's a 6 foot distance, but I wonder if, like private schools, we can consider using spaces, open spaces that aren't being used, like the libraries, to be able to accommodate 6 feet spacing, or even cafeterias, since the kids aren't having lunch at schools. So that I have 2 questions, but that's my first one. If we're trying to come up with a plan to consider ways to accommodate the county rules, but still get all the kids in school 4 days a week. Should I just go right on with my second?
No. Well, no, I think you can let everybody answer that. Yeah.
Ms. McKenna, was that your question?
Well, yeah, I'm wondering if we're trying to consider, like private schools do, ways to accommodate the 6 feet in the schools with all the students there. Like, are we thinking about using libraries that aren't being used, or the cafeterias, since we're not having lunches in schools right now? Are these part of what's being considered while you're making a plan? I assume you're trying to make a plan.
Yes, ma'am. So I think that, thank you for your question. And the sentiment that you just expressed is what schools are currently doing. I know that at the high school, the cafeteria, with the exception of on distribution Wednesdays, the cafeteria is actually being used as a space that allows students at the high school to socially distance, and several classes are there in that space. Not all of our elementary schools have libraries, because some of the libraries have actually been converted to classrooms in order to be able to maintain social distancing and increase the number of students that they're able to serve. What school does your child attend?
I have 3 children who are all in elementary school, so I'm not specifically, they go to Mark Newby School.
Okay.
So, you know, and I know it is one of the smaller schools, but like I said, the cafeteria is not being used, and they have a large blacktop area outside that's not being used right now. So I wonder if that's just something while you're making plans, if you're considering using those spaces.
It is when it's appropriate to do so. I think that some of the interior spaces are definitely in the consideration group. Based on some of the chillier temperatures, going outside at this particular time of year is challenging. We had a leadership team huddle today to really discuss and calibrate around our ability to increase capacity within our schools while still maintaining the 6-foot social distancing recommendation from the CDC and from the county. So that's the only rule other than the cleaning and the disinfecting recommendations that we have been following last school year and this year that we are really subscribed to. As the recommendations change and as community transmission continues to decrease, we will then see an increase in capacity. I know that Mr. Smith at the Newby School has been working with parents in order to accommodate as many requests as possible. But I will share with you is that the first tier of students and families as far back as November were based on children that the data showed were of higher risk, special education students that had significant needs, English language learners who had language challenges, and families who had extremely challenging home environments that prevented them from being fully engaged in the learning process. That was tier 1. We have since then opened up based on the current space that is available in each of the schools. And we have asked for school leaders to continue engaging their families who have expressed interest in trying to accommodate as many families as possible. But that is based on a classroom by classroom basis and a grade level by grade level basis. So I would encourage you to follow up with Mr. Smith again. Based on the conversations that we had with leaders today, in order to express your interest about expanding in-person instruction for your children.
Now, I have one more thing I'd just like to discuss. And basically, it's really my concern, since I have 3 children right now in elementary school, I'm really concerned about their level of education. You know, I know that earlier when Joe Andrescavage spoke, he talked about the kids being in school 4 hours a day and only learning 3 hours. But my kids do get 45 minutes in breaks. They get a 15-minute SEL class. They get 5-minute brain breaks. In between all of that, their instruction is a full, some days 2 hours and 30 minutes. And it's even less than that on Wednesdays when we have our specials at 12 o'clock. And I have the unique opportunity of seeing this because I am a stay-at-home mom. So I monitor all 3 of them on school. And I see that they're not getting 4 hours of instruction, and they're all taking breaks at different times. And quite frankly, they're being disruptive to each other. And now the other thing that concerns me is with all the time online, they're doing no handwriting. Some of the classes are doing handwriting. My kindergartner and my first grader are doing handwriting, but some of the grade levels have done all their work typing. There's no handwriting being practiced. My kids take tests. They don't get any feedback on the test. They take a test. They don't get a grade back. How are they learning anything if they don't know what questions they got wrong or right on the test? And when I mentioned this to the administrator, I started getting test home, but I wasn't getting in test home until I mentioned it to him. And that being said, also, I've gotten feedback from the teachers saying, your kid's having trouble in this area. They need to practice it. But how is my kid going to practice it when they don't get any homework? Well, they're not going to practice. They're not going to take it upon themselves to practice those skills. So I'm wondering, what are we going to do to try and get a better level of education than what they're getting right now?
Well, Ms. McKenna, you have very valid concerns. And what I will share with you is that this remote environment is not opportune. I'm not making excuses for the experience, the very real experience that you and your family are having. However, I would say that as a district, just like all of the districts, we have been adhering to the recommendations of what was developmentally appropriate in a remote learning environment for students from the Department of Education, with a core focus on literacy and math with embedded social emotional learning, and then activities in order to attempt to reduce the volume of screen time that children are exposed to on a daily basis. So when you begin to factor in all of those components, it does present sometimes disadvantages for some, advantages for other based on learning style. What I would encourage you to continue doing is to continue with the two-way dialogue with your child's teachers, expressing your levels of concern so that modifications can actually take place in terms of day-to-day instruction. A lot of these, what you have articulated are some of the nuances as it relates with the different learning styles for each and every student. And as a district, we are trying to be responsive to those differences and those needs, but it does require for us to constantly be engaged in that process and communicate when things are not working. So I would encourage you to continue following up with your child's teachers. And if that is not bearing the necessary response that you are seeking, please follow up with Mr. Smith, and he will help to address some of your concerns.
All right, well, I thank you for answering my questions. I just really hope that you know that, you know, most of the parents want to get the kids back in school. I understand that you have rules that you need to follow. You know, I have a kindergartner who cries and says she hates school every day, and that's really sad. So keep that in mind, and please try and get it done as soon as you possibly can. Thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
Thanks, Ms. McKenna. Just Rebecca, you gotta let the next person in. Rob, I have one
Yes.
housekeeping thing, and then you can, all right? I just want to let everybody know, if you're texting or talking with communicating with anyone who was not able to get on earlier, Cassandra and Rebecca on the fly tonight, we bumped up our allowed attendance. So there should be room. So if you want to let them know if they can jump on, they can jump on. Okay, Rob?
At least we think so.
Yeah.
At least we think so. I don't know if it takes
Yeah.
an hour or two to, I don't know if it takes an
wait.
hour or two to, we like check the box and we're hoping it you know, lets people
Sure.
in. So
Now
I'll
she
have
tells me
family
she
members who
thinks
can
so.
go on just to test it. So
Yeah.
I just,
So we're open, and Danny Moss, the
Rebecca,
floor is
hold on.
yours. Go for it.
Rebecca, hang on, hang on.
hold on, just because I think there's some questions that we could probably answer pretty quick that might cut through some, you know, the questions that a lot of people have. So just help me with Stupid Question Tuesday here. So if we went to 4-day a week, that would mean, at least in theory, we could have 100% of our students there, because there's no other way to break up. So if we had 4-day a week in school class, we could in theory have 100% of our students there. Fair? Yes?
In theory, yes, but in
Okay, that'll get to the next one. I think we're going to get here. So then, but people will still have the ability to opt out, which means, right, so 100 will be whatever it wants to be there, needs to be there, minus our opt-out. Because at 100%, we need to double our classroom space. But the problem is you also have to double your teachers should do that, or you need to have double sessions going from, you know, you're still not going to have a full day. You'd have to break it up in some way. So there's the logistics of, if you had that, you need to double the space, double the teachers, or have some time and a half that teachers would have to teach, because they'd have to do 2 sessions. Is that fair enough to say?
Yes, sir. This
Okay.
is, so this is not a willingness problem. This is a
No,
math.
I
problem.
get
This is-
that. I get
no,
that.
no,
That's why I figured we're gonna cut through this. And then,
This
so
is a
then-
math, this is a math problem, to
Of
be,
course it is, and
honest.
that's why, that's what I'm seeing here. So then this survey that you're talking about is very important to the process because what? It's going to ask people to redeclare if there's a 4-day, if there's a 4-day thing, would you partake in 4-day? And then you're going to have a hard number to say, this is what we're working out grade to grade to essentially work with, right? So
Yes.
you can't do that unless you know what's the universe of people that want to be there or need to be there or required, if anyone's required
Absolutely.
to be there
Absolutely.
for a day. And that you can't get there without that hard data. You can use old data, but it's not necessarily going to be accurate. So
Correct.
then the survey you're going to put out Friday, how long are you going to keep it open, to essentially get that data that's going to at least give you some of what you're going to need for the next step?
Our goal is to keep it open for at least 5 days. So we will probably give families through the weekend up until probably late Wednesday or Thursday of the following week in order to have the opportunity to engage within that process. Our current communication channels, we normally get about 1,500 to 1,600 of families between text and email. We will also consider for the students who are coming in person who may have families not as engaged, we may consider a paper option. But with a paper option, that actually extends the time because then someone has to manually input that in the system, and then you can disaggregate the data. So it's a challenging supposition, but our goal is to have the most current data so we know exactly the number of families that we're planning for in this iteration of expansion.
Okay, so that helps me and maybe helps others understand what the next steps and what's going to get you there. And I imagine probably something within there is going to be to chase down people too, right? Because we never, I don't know about you, I never get 100% response to anything. And
Right.
so, but the thing is you actually do need that info. It's not like, well, if you don't respond, you still have to incorporate what they're going to do.
Right.
So that's, or unless there's a policy, if you don't, you default to one way or the other. And I don't, so. Okay, listen, I hope that for the 108 folks that are on here, that my stupid questions might help understand the space issue, right? We've got one class per grade, and you can't, like, as much as there may be a library or gym, you got to have for every class. So you need at least six new class spaces for each place, maybe more. So yeah, it's a lot. And I'm not saying that, look, that's what you're hired to do. It ain't, you need to figure out a way. But yeah, it certainly challenges. So, okay.
So Danny Moskowskis, there you go, you're there. Okay.
Thanks, Danny.
Thank you. Hi. Yeah, and thank you for that clarification, Rob. It did clear up my third question, so I'll keep mine to 2 questions then. But first, if I could just clarify, my kids are in high school, and I know depending on whether they're elementary, middle school, or high school, parents may have slightly different concerns. But with the high school orientation this year, we were actually told that there was a rollout plan for progressive opening of schools, right? It was 1 day, then it was 2 days, then it would be 4 days. And so we were told that plan already existed. I just wanted to clarify, because I gathered from what Regan said that plan was not left by the previous superintendent. So I just wanted to clarify whether that was, whether there was ever a plan, or whether we were just told there was one and there wasn't. Did that plan exist at any point?
Yeah, Danny, sorry. I think I got a little flustered and probably wasn't as clear as I could have been before. There's absolutely been a plan in place, and what Dr. Oswald talked about in the beginning when we had a similar 100-person meeting. And I remember they had to bump up Zoom as well. That, you know, there was the slow rollout into starting back to any sort of in-person learning whatsoever. And then the next phase was always assumed that it would not be happening before now because of the pandemic, right? No matter how much we'd all like to be back, we knew that the numbers most likely, particularly for November and December, were going to be high because of the holidays and people gathering. So the plan was always that this phase of beginning to expand in-person learning would not be happening until now.
Right.
So nobody was making up that there was a plan when they were talking to you before. So
okay. So I just wanted to clarify. I don't remember being given a month or a day that was going to happen, but we were told that the plan existed, and per the circumstances and per the evolution of the pandemic, that would be put into place when it was appropriate. So you're confirming that. Thank you. So somebody else's question in the chat was, are we starting from scratch, and from scratch being February 1st on Dr. McDowell's first day? The answer is no, because that plan already exists. Great.
Correct.
So we're now trying, as Rob clarified, we're trying to get a hard number on how many kids we're trying to reincorporate so that we can follow that previous plan that was already laid out. Is that correct?
Yes. Yes.
Okay.
High schools and middle school are in a different place. We have significant availability at the high school because those of us who have teenage children know that sometimes our high school students have the desire to exercise flexibility that our elementary students do not have. Currently, we are a little over 12 to 13% of students actually attending in-person instruction at the high school. And this is based on families opting for remote instruction. So in terms of what engagement looks like at the high school level, it looks a little bit different because there is significant space that's available for students to be able to come in. The high school leadership team are actively engaging students on a weekly basis, and every single week they're actually increasing the numbers of students that are coming back for in-person instruction. And the same process is taking place at the middle school. Elementary schools are a bit more challenging because of the supervisory nature and the age of our students.
I'm sorry, did you say that every week the number of in-person students is increasing?
At the high school level, yes.
Okay, I was unaware of that. My student goes 2 days a week, and so that gives to my second part of my question. Back to the engagement and kids, you know, how they're emotionally feeling about even doing any type of school right now, right? My daughter goes in person 2 days a week. But the way she describes it to me, she may as well be home because she sits at her desk, talks to her teacher through her computer when she is in person at school, because the teacher is talking to the rest of the class on Zoom, and my daughter can't physically raise her hand and talk to the teacher face to face, even if she's in the room physically. And so I'm frankly very concerned about where their engagement is going with regards to school. And I can't say that any of my kids are, would have been previously any kids that are in danger of disengaging in any traditional ways, right? But they are now. And it's very concerning. And even the limited in-person time they have at school is really being treated as remote time. And so from an instructional standpoint, I'm curious to know what your guidance to your teachers would be in that respect. Speaking on best practices as far as instructional practices go, and also the social emotional piece of it that we're all concerned about.
Well, thank you again for that question as well. When we think about our high school, the high school is in a different place than in our elementary school. The number of students that are participating remotely significantly outnumbers the number of students attending in person. So our educators are unfortunately focused on the largest number of students in terms of instructional delivery. It does not mean that there is not an opportunity for students that are participating in person. I would encourage your daughter, as well as yourself, if the level of attention is insufficient, I would encourage you to follow up directly with the teacher so that an appropriate adjustment can be made. That would be my recommendation, because
with all due respect, Dr. McDowell, I've done that already. And my specific question to the principal was, could we have the kids turn their cameras on to up that engagement so at least they can, have teachers can teach two faces? I'm an educator as well, and I've given speeches and seminars and webinars to blank screens, and it's not engaging for anybody, and the response from the principal was, we're basing this on best practices and research without citing what that research was. And without, frankly, addressing the lack of engagement, the video games that are happening, girls doing their makeup, people going for walks, taking their dogs out, making snacks, having lunch 3 times a day. The kids are not engaged. And we've tried to address it with building administration, and it's not being addressed.
Okay, Danny, thanks. I'm gonna try to, we got a bunch of people that would like to say something, and we wanna try to move through them.
Absolutely. Thank you for taking my question.
Sure, you got it. Thanks, Danny. And Rebecca, it looks like it just won't let me recognize people.
I am going to recognize Jake Lehman. I'm going to put you into the panel now.
Okay, great. Can everybody hear me?
Sure can. Go right ahead.
Okay, thanks very much. All right, 2 questions. One for Ms. Kaiden, and then one for Dr. McDowell. I guess I'll go with Ms. Kaiden first. Just sort of picking up on a comment that was made earlier in the meeting. I regularly participate in the Board of Education meetings, and it is true that at least, since back in October, there hasn't been any substantive discussion that I've seen, at least in the, and perhaps there is in other fora, but of COVID and the impact of COVID on kids in the schools, and what's being done in terms of putting a plan together to reopen. So I guess my question is, can we have a commitment from you that from here on out, for the next board meeting and for the remainder of the year, and perhaps beyond that, that's going to be an agenda item at board meetings, where there's going to be a report on what's going on in terms of getting kids back in school, and the board members can ask questions, and of course, the public can ask questions, because then it'll be an agenda item.
So we've, thank you for your question, and you brought that up last night as well, and we've since discussed that, and it will be an item on the agenda, so that it goes to what you just said in terms of being able to have people speak to it as an agenda item listed. Just as a quick aside, you're absolutely right that it hasn't been on the agenda itself, and that's I think that was honestly not everything feels COVID related, so I think it slips me a little bit that the actual topic wasn't there, because we are talking about it in our committee meetings, in our planning, and in the emails that would be going out to the families about it. But you're absolutely right that it wasn't a specific item that was then on the agenda for us to update the community as well. And so from now on, it will absolutely be there for updates as we go along, and for the community to be able to ask questions. So thank you for that.
Okay, I appreciate that answer. I think that would be helpful to a lot of people going forward, because, as we can see here tonight, that the number one concern of parents in the Collingswood School District is, when are Collingswood kids going to get to go back to school full time? Okay, so second point, I'll just be quick. Dr. McDowell, I heard you last night. I heard you tonight. I appreciate what you've had to say. One thing that you touched on, but that I don't think is, and maybe everybody knows this, but that I don't think has been adequately recognized enough, at least up to this point, is that every day that kids are not in school full time, or that, and you say we're open. To be fair, Children go to school 2 days a week for 4 hours a day. They're in class while the teacher, and this is no fault of the teacher, is forced to both, conduct a Zoom lesson. And then, the kids in class, I can say for my son, you're kind of left behind because, they're there physically, but there's not really a lot of interaction going on between the teacher and the student. And I'm not faulting the teachers for that because they're being asked to do something that's very difficult. Back to my point, I think that there has to be a recognition that every day that, kids are not in school, and there's survey after survey and article and literature and data to support this, children are suffering emotionally. Children are suffering in their mental health. We see all the stuff in the news about the, tremendous increase in mental health problems for children and behavioral problems for children. I can say for my own son, he thrives on interaction with other children, and not being in that environment regularly, that causes him to act out at home. And I know that I'm not the only one that has that issue. So, we're impacting our children every day. We're impacting families every day. Think of, when you have a child that's participating in remote instruction, there's got to be a parent for a small child sitting with that child, or somebody's got to be sitting with that child every single day. How many parents in Collingswood are not working that could be working or that want to be working because they're forced to sit home next to their small child and assist them with remote learning? We talked about a little bit about this last night, equity. There's a lot of talk about equity in Collingswood, and I think that's good and that's right. There is nothing that exacerbates inequity more than the present circumstance, where people of means can afford to have one parent stay home and sit with the child. And, a single mom, somebody of lesser means, they're really up the creek. Kids are being left behind. And I know that. I think it's important, and, you can speak to this if you'd like to, that we recognize that, when we say, you said, do no harm, this is a balance. And on the one hand, we have the profound detrimental effect every single day, and this has been going on for more than a year, of kids not being in the school. And on the other side, yes, there's coronavirus, but I think it's been made clear from the CDC, from Dr. Fauci, from, folks in other districts that, schools are not an epicenter of, or a place where COVID is transmitted, at least not significantly. So there's a balancing there. But I guess I just wanted to voice, and I think everybody agrees with this, there's a profound detrimental effect on children every single day, a profound exacerbation of inequity every single day that these schools are closed. And so I just hope that, that guides you, and that everything that's being done is being done with all deliberate speed.
So I do not disagree with what you just said. And I am fully aware and acknowledge that the impact of this pandemic has created systemic challenges. We believe and continue to believe that our students belong in school. And what's driving the pace of our planning, what's driving the pace of our planning is that acknowledgement. So when we talk about the inequities that are directly contributed to the pandemic, to the social distancing, to the mitigation strategies, we are in agreement. In terms of what we do next, we have to make sure that we are quickly but safely transitioning back to full-time in-person instruction. So I completely agree. I acknowledge that there is a tremendous burden and heavy lift being placed on parents. We know that you have been patient. We know that you have made significant sacrifices within your families. We are asking for you to continue to be with us and continue to be engaged in this subject so that we can quickly and safely transition back to where we need to be.
Thank you.
Okay, Cassandra, can you recognize the next person?
Yes, I've already given Tim Farrow the floor. Tim, if you want to unmute.
Thanks, Cass. Good evening, everyone. I understand from a short stint on the board that thinking outside of the box and moving outside of the box is much easier said than done when it comes to the nature of, not our school district specifically, but all the schools in New Jersey. But I guess the first question is, as far as this survey, it's a very short one, I would imagine, because it's basically, are you in or are you out for the most part at this point? And being that our communications have moved to the point of coming every day to us through texts and emails, and it's gotten very efficient, couldn't it be moved up now that I'm sure you're sensing a much greater urgency amongst the general consensus? Move it up tomorrow, like get this thing out like ASAP at this point. So that's kind of like my first question. And then the second question is, have we started kind of looking into plan Bs? Let's say if our numbers just don't come back to allow for the even 4 days a week because we don't have the space based on the people that want to come back to school. Plan Bs to me would include, you mentioned the high school. They don't want to go. They're probably not going to want to go for a while. That's just the nature of a lot of high school students. If we have that much more space, have we looked into that plan B as far as trying to utilize that space for elementary kids who do want to on a much higher level and need to on a much higher level come back to school? And then also as far as elementary, have we looked into the idea, well, we can't bring them all back when the weather shifts, can we have a gym every day to get the kids out and doing something socially? So that's my next question is, have we started as far as these plan Bs that I think we have to have at this point? And again, the first question is, can we just get that survey out like now? It's a very short survey. Thanks.
Well, Mr. Farrow, thank you for your question. In terms of the survey, it will be short, but the types of questions that will be asked will be a bit different than the survey that was sent at the beginning of the school year, because we have different circumstances and different challenges. So in terms of the survey, we have met over the last several days in terms of the content within the survey. The structures and the formats will be created within the next day. We will review to make sure that the systems of receiving the data are sufficient, and then we will make sure that we get it out through all of our communication channels to make sure that we get the maximum number of participants so that we can make the most informed decision. In terms of Plan B, we are currently exploring Plan B based on our facilities. So I appreciate, and I actually wrote down your idea as part of our Plan B discussions, but we are meeting on a daily basis to talk about contingency, and that will be something that is brought up in our meeting tomorrow.
Okay. Oh, and I'm sorry, I forgot one more part of my Plan B. I don't want to take up any more time. I don't want to be fair to everybody. If I can ask one more thing, and that is, as far as the issue with Zoom instruction, have we looked into, as part of a sort of Plan B, C, whatever you want to call it, at the elementary level, perhaps trying to have one teacher coordinate as a Zoom instructor across the grade levels and the other teachers teaching in class? We have at Tatum, for instance, 2 classes, 2 teachers. So if we didn't have the capacity to require, let's say, every teacher to be teaching in the classroom, it's just so again, I don't know that that's going to be feasible, but I think it's another thing I hope that is at least being sort of considered to help with that issue of the difficulty of the Zoom instruction. Thanks.
Thank you.
Hey, I'm going to give Maggie the floor.
Okay, and Maggie, before you start, listen, it's getting we're coming up on 8:30, guys. So we're not gonna, I don't think we're gonna get to every question that's here. So to get as many as we can, could we, everybody's asked, I think 3 or 4 questions with 2 or 3 parts in their questions. So if we could really like get to the like your most important thing, you could always send an email in, but try to be a little briefer and get to your question so we can try to give everybody a quick chance. Okay, Maggie, it's all yours.
Thank you.
And I'm guessing, Maggie, is that you or is this your daughter's?
No, this is actually me.
Okay, there we go. Somebody claims ownership.
First, thank you all so much for taking your time tonight. I will try to keep this very brief. I'm curious to hear if the students are going back sort of in person for like 4 days or even more, will it still be the case that they will be spending most of their time sort of on the screen in a Zoom sort of classroom setting, with the idea that maybe some people will still choose to be remote? And then the second sort of, I guess, question I would have is that, is there a sort of statistic or indicator that you are looking at that would sort of allow you to feel comfortable where kids could be going back, like all kids, 5 full days, a la 1 year ago today? Thanks.
Maggie, you hit that really quickly. Could you repeat
Frank,
the last?
you can do that too, okay?
The last part of that, the second part of your question?
Sure. Sorry, Dr. McDowell, I rushed through that. The second part of the question is there a statistic or an indicator that you're looking for that would allow the district to feel comfortable with opening sort of 5 full days a week for 100% of the students to be like back in school? So something that would look like a year ago today when kids were still all there in their schools.
Well, I think the statistic that we're looking for is green status in terms of the COVID activity index, in terms of to be completely released back to full-time instruction. I will say that on a weekly basis, all of the school district leaders at least within Camden County, we meet with our public health officials as well as the Department of Education every Thursday for an update, for a brief, and then a calibration on these particular subjects, looking at the indicators, looking at the data, and then taking advice and recommendations, or often strong recommendations from our public health officials as well as our state officials. We have an upcoming meeting on Thursday where we are expecting some new updates. And as we get new information, then that alters and changes our plans. So what I would say is that there's not a single indicator that we're looking at. There's actually multiple variables. But I also want to make sure that the community understands that these types of decisions are not exclusive to the Board of Education or the superintendent without community engagement. Tonight, we have heard multiple good ideas that have surfaced that some of our leaders have not thought about. We've thought about a lot of things, but in order for us to be able to get to a place where we have a solid plan that can be implemented to meet the needs, there has to be a cycle of feedback and ongoing communication, and we have to engage our stakeholders a bit differently. One of the groups of stakeholders that we also have to engage are our educators who are responsible for implementation. So I cannot stress that enough. Their feedback is critically important because they are closest to the work, and they are the individuals that are going to help usher in and bring our children back to be able to meet their needs. I would say the conversation that has surfaced as it relates to synchronous or asynchronous learning, remote versus live instruction, that is something that we have been debating, and we are trying to find the appropriate solution to make sure that the disparities don't continue in terms of students who are physically present not receiving the types of feedback and the types of interaction that they need in order to be successful, and vice versa for students who are disengaged in a full remote environment. So those are areas that we are working on, and we are actively seeking solutions to be able to support.
Thank you.
Okay.
All right, I recognize Frank Church.
Hey, I'll make this quick. Can everyone hear me? All right, I just want to get curious to see if the current administration would make a pledge to keep Woodland in our school district in the future.
I'm a bit confused to make a pledge. We currently have a a multiple year sending receiving relationship with Woodland. I have been working pretty collaboratively with the Woodland Superintendent. And we have been in active discussion about increasing our partnership to be able to support that sending receiving relationship for students who attend Collingswood High School. So I am unaware of any discussion to not include Woodland as part of our school community.
Fantastic news. Thank you.
I just wanted to add, we're very proud of that relationship. And my understanding is that the only way that final decision actually comes from the state. And we are very pleased with that relationship and would like to see it continue. And the only way that it probably wouldn't would be something that would happen with the state. So as far as we're concerned, yes, we 100% would like that to continue.
That was really good. That was a single question and an answer.
I'm going to bring MD to the floor. I apologize. I don't have a name for you, but MD.
Could you just identify yourself for everybody? Somebody there?
They've been recognized, but I've asked them to
You need
unmute.
you need to unmute yourself. Okay.
I'm not sure. I will move on at the moment to Andrea. Let's check. Sorry about that.
Andrea, you just don't have to unmute yourself and we should be able to hear you.
Yes, I'm here. Can you hear me?
Yep.
Okay, I'm going to try to make this as quick as possible. One of the things I was going to say was what Tim brought up about, I'm fortunate enough to change my schedule, my work schedule, to be next to my son during Zoom. And I have noticed that the teachers are doing an amazing job. First off, I have to say that, but they do have to juggle between the kids in person and then the kids on Zoom. And a lot of times, you can't be two places at once. And I can see how it can affect both the students in class and also the students on Zoom. So I think moving forward, if we are in the same situation next year, which of course I hope we aren't, but if we could look into having one Zoom instructor that could be pooled from all the schools, right? So kids from Tatum, Newby, Zane North will be on Zoom with one instructor, and then the kids in class could then have their in-person instructor hands-on. I think that would make a huge difference. And and then this way, it's not like we have to pay for a new Zoom teacher for every class if we can pool them through the schools. Since they're on Zoom anyway, I just think maybe it could work. And another question I did have was when we were talking about the 4-day in-class sessions, I understand there's a limited space. I get that. And we have guidelines and we need to keep space. I was just wondering, since we are only doing 4 hours a day now, and there are breaks within that 4 hours, would we be able to do a morning session of half of the kids in person and then an afternoon session with the other half of the kids? And then this in-person teacher would only have those students though, and not have to juggle Zoom. So there wouldn't need to be as many breaks. And instead it's really one-on-one with the kids while the students on Zoom have their Zoom instructor. And I just think it could all flow a little bit better, maybe. It's just an idea, of course, but I was just thinking of it.
Thank you. I wrote it down and it will be on the topic of discussion in our team meeting tomorrow.
Okay, great. Thank you guys so much.
Thanks, Andrea.
All right, we are going to bring Jennifer to the floor.
Hi.
Hi, Jennifer.
Quickly say that Dr. McDowell, I really appreciate how quickly you are addressing the public and how transparent you were trying to make this process. I feel historically the Board of Ed has not been as open and as hearing as you have been just in your short 3 weeks. So thank you very much. We really appreciate it.
Thank you.
I have I wanted to piggyback on the virtual learning. I'm a teacher as well. I teach at a private school. We have been back 5-person full-time, 5 days a week. We've used our gym, we've used everything, and we've been there. I do want parents to realize though that on an average normal non-COVID year, students get maybe they get a total of 3 hours of direct instruction during a day. So being on Zoom for 4 hours, they are getting the same equivalent of time that they would in a regular classroom. And I really appreciate the reduced screen time. I don't like my kid on the screen that long. So it's really great. That part I've really appreciated. But I guess my quick question is, how has the teacher union, how have they been flexible? Have they been willing to be flexible? How has that created a more difficult situation with the ideas of, AM, PM cohorts and outdoor cohorts and all of that? Thank you.
So Jennifer, thank you for your question. In response to our teachers, we have I have been very fortunate where I have worked all over the country and I have seen lots of different models, lots of different circumstances. And I will say, and I'm not being braggadocious and I'm not using cliches, but we have some of the best teachers in the country. Our teachers have bent over backwards in order to adjust instruction, meet the needs in a very challenging circumstance, and have been completely flexible as it relates to trying to meet the growing demands of students in the midst of COVID. Our CEA, so our Collingswood Education Association leadership team, they have been very honest, very forthcoming, and very collaborative, and have expressed the willingness to work in concert with the district and with the board for us to figure out a way to be able to move forward. So I know that those discussions are taking place. We are all equally committed in supporting the needs of our students and transitioning back to in-person instruction as quickly and safely as possible. But you as an educator are fully aware there are specific factors and logistics that we have to work through to make sure that we get it right. But I would say that our teachers have been nothing but above board and accommodating and extremely flexible.
That's really good to hear. I mean, I know they are personally, but I didn't know how the union was as a whole. I think one of the things, I was on my return to school committee, and I think one of the things that families are struggling with is this ability to physically return. And I think maybe if you spoke to the restrictions about ventilation and distancing, we spent months measuring our classrooms, rearranging desks, ordering plexiglass dividers. And even in our largest spaces, we were only able to fit half capacity of our classes. And we split our classrooms so that one lead teacher had 2 cohorts with a full-time assistant, and the full-time assistant watches one cohort, and that lead teacher now teaches that lesson twice. She teaches it to the first cohort and then switches with the assistant. And yes, that works in a private school, but that wouldn't happen in a public school because of certification rules and stuff like that. I think there's a lot of nuances that a lot of the public doesn't understand. I think if you spoke to that, I think that would help with understanding. And I'm finished, so thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, Cassandra?
Great. Yep, I'm gonna allow Greg to talk.
Okay.
I'm sorry, Greg. I will have to, looks like you're using an older version of Zoom. So that's giving us some tech. While I figure that out, let's hear from Nicole. Nicole?
Yep.
Hi, I would like to ask, just to, I guess, piggyback on this idea of supporting the teachers while they're trying to teach remotely as well as teach in person. Has there been any thought to engaging student teachers to support the remote instruction given that there's colleges of education in the state and these teachers need time and work to kind of support the teachers in the work that they need to do online and be responsive. Because even if you have one remote teacher, that's still a lot of students for a teacher to manage online. And so can student teachers help support the online learning for groups so that the teacher that's in the room can do what they do best and be live and interactive with the kids?
Right. Nicole, thank you for your question. That's a great idea. And I know that in the classrooms where we do have student teachers, I know that some of that is taking place. However, our student teachers are there for a semester, and they are also there to learn, to receive feedback, and to grow into the educators that they will become under the mentorship of our teachers here in Collingswood. So I will say that that relationship is fluid, and that each mentor teacher and student teacher are navigating that space differently. But from my perspective, that's a Band-Aid, and that's not necessarily a long-term solution, because those young people are coming in and coming out, and our students really need certain levels of continuity. So I know that our mentored teachers are being flexible in how they partner and support the student teachers to support students. But I do believe that we need a longer term solution that does not depend on the good graces of our student teachers who are just with us for a short period of time.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay. Thanks, Nicole. I have had to promote Greg to a panelist. I see him up at the top, but you're still muted. Greg, if you want to give that a spin. You're presenting a little additional challenge this evening for us. There you go.
Hear me?
We can.
This is my son's Chromebook. I don't know why it has an older version of Zoom. That's a little disconcerting, but first of all, I'd like to say I think we should go back to full in person now. It's been proven to be safe. There's thousands of schools across the country doing it and have proven that it's safe. That being said, I know it's not going to happen. It looks like we're going to be in some form of hybrid for the rest of the year. My first question is, are you saying legally you couldn't reopen fully right now? Did I hear you correctly, Dr. McDowell?
No, sir, I did not say that.
Okay. And I know other schools are using 3 feet space and not 6 feet. Now I would think with the desks wrapped in plexiglass, we could get that down to 3 feet.
Mr. Filinick, was that a question or?
Yes. Would you consider bringing the 6 feet distance down to 3 feet with the desks being wrapped in plexiglass?
So currently, that particular approach is being used in some organizations and some entities, but it is cost prohibitive, and it is also ill-advised based on the data and the feedback that we're receiving from our public health officials. When there is no other option in those closed spaces, especially when you're talking about students receiving related services such as speech or occupational therapy or those natures, that's appropriate for a limited particular amount of time. But long-term levels of exposure using plexiglass is not recommended by our public health officials. So at this time, we're not exploring that as an option, and we're also not exploring 3 feet because the latest information that we've received from the CDC as well as our public health officials is really asking us to hold to the 6 feet social distancing guidelines.
All right, last thing real quick. Assuming a Cali number of 1,
teachers all vaccinated, 80% of the population vaccinated by the summer. Numbers as low as they were the previous summer. What could possibly keep you from reopening fully in the fall?
I wish we could get there. To be perfectly honest, I would love to have that conversation, but yet again, that is not a decision that I, as a superintendent, will make unilaterally. The same process, regardless of the transmission rate, is still going to take place, which is making sure that we are presenting the data, the information, presenting our plans, seeking the necessary feedback, and then implementation of our plans. Our goal is to move to in-person instruction. That's the goal. The only thing that is still left up to a question is how fast do we actually do that, and when is it safe to do so? So based on the conditions that you have created, that would be an ideal situation, and we would be moving at a rapid pace to try to restore our organization back to as normal an environment as possible. But what I will say is that that's currently not the status of where we are, and we are being responsive to where we are right now, but we are planning for that situation that you just outlined.
Thank you, Dr. McDowell.
Thank you, sir.
Hey, Jim, I think you're talking, but you're muted.
Hey, it's probably the way most people like it. So I want to thank everyone that participated tonight. Really appreciate everybody coming out. We had a great turnout. I want to thank Regan and Dr. McDowell for joining us. Great to, first big public event, his tenure here, and we're great. We're very appreciative that he was able to squeeze in and make it. Before we close up, Regan, Fred, anything you'd like that? Fred, you've had to said enough words tonight. You don't need to add anything else. Regan, anything you'd like to add?
Just thank you to everyone for coming out and sharing your concerns. As Dr. McDowell said, we were taking lots of notes, and we'll be using the feedback that we got tonight to incorporate into the plans moving forward. So thank you for taking the time out of your Tuesday night to come talk to us and hear what Dr. McDowell, especially much more so than me, had to say tonight. So thank you very much.
And Fred, I'm only kidding. If you'd like to finish up with anything, go right ahead.
I would like to finish up.
Sure.
I would like to thank all of our community members who did come out. These are not normal times, and these are not easy discussions, but they're the right discussions. I am encouraged at the level of engagement, at the level of thoughtfulness from families to help us problem solve. I would encourage you to continue to engage with us. It's going to take our entire community, because we're all in this together. I am a parent. My child attends Collingswood Public Schools as well. So I am in the same circumstance, probably not the same exact as many of our families, but I am in that walk with you. And I understand the tremendous imposition that this has placed on our community. We are tasked with providing solutions as quickly and safely as possible. We are working hard every day with our amazing educators, and we will get to a solution in a close proximity of time. Please be patient while we work through some of the hiccups along the way. And please stay tuned for the updates and the opportunities to engage further on this very important topic. So thank you so much.
Okay, thanks, Fred. Joan?
I just want to say that I think this was a great meeting, and I really appreciate all of the families' interaction. And Dr. McDowell, and welcome, and it's great to have you here, and we really appreciate you, and Regan for all of your detailed comments, and all of the parents who gave their comments. I think it was really, really good and productive, and I look forward to more conversations. Thank you, everybody.
Thanks. Bravo.
Well, look, you folks are here because you care about your children, you care about your school district. Now, take care of yourself, get some rest. Take care of yourself and care for each other, because this is hard. This is really hard. I've got struggling children. I'm struggling, family struggling. We all are. And let's just remember that we're all in the same boat, and you know, try to be part of what's going to help move us forward and get us out of this.
And I just want to echo, if there's anything that anybody needs, if you find a neighbor that you haven't seen for a little while, an elderly person, anybody, just please don't hesitate. You can email me, Rob, Joan, anytime, J Maley, R Lewandowski, J Leonard at collingswood.com. Shoot an email. We try to get people on it right away with anything that's going on. There are other things going on. Life is moving ahead. Our commission meeting is Monday night. You're welcome to join us on Zoom as well. We don't usually get 100 that we get with the school superintendent, but we'll be introducing a budget Monday night and kind of moving things along. There's some construction going on in town. So thank you all for being a part of this, and be safe, wear a mask, and thank you all for taking part. Okay, see you guys later. Thank you.
Thanks, Jim. Thanks, everyone.
Good night.
Thanks, everybody.
Good night.
Good night, everyone.